I'm making this video because I have been contacted by so many people about looking at Brompton competitor bike that are maybe not the ones I would recommend. As you know, I only recommend bicycles that are top of the line in every respect. That would mean top of the line engineering, support, reliability, and design, and usefulness as well. This is something the Brompton company is no longer doing with several of their recent models, but the classic steel frame is still a top of the line recommended bike. What I'm going to focus on in this video are those bikes who are not recommended by me, but which are honorable mention. What an honorable mention means is that these are good bikes. You can still use them for years and years, and they do have some advantages even against some of the best bikes I recommend, but they just don't have the full package. They don't have classic museum quality design. They might not be hand built. They might not last a lifetime. The electric versions may not be as powerful as they should be, and so on. So they are not 100%, but they are good bikes. They are decent bikes. And I'm going to be focusing on three models or three companies here, and the brands are Ahooga, a company I only found out about recently, the Vello, one of which is actually a recommended bike on this channel, and the Tern. The Tern has been discussed in some respects already. Again, one of their bikes is recommended on the channel, but not most of them. So before I get into it, make sure to check out the links. I provide you links to all of the bikes discussed. Check out my book if you want to build an outrageously cool bike like the one I have, which is based on classic Brompton. All the information is in there. There's really nothing else needed. I also have some merchandise. I have designed some t-shirts and so on, so check it out. And here is the first bicycle I want to review. It is the Ahooga. It is a Belgian bike for the most part, but I do get the sense that some of the assembly and manufacturing is very likely done in China. First, let me look at the strength of this bike. There is an amazing and unusual frame. It's not as elegant as a Brompton classic steel frame or the Birdie or Moulton, which are the top of the lines I recommend. I recommend the entire Birdie product line as well as everything Alex Moulton makes, even the ones that might be slightly overpriced. What the Ahooga gives you is an amazing non-breaking hinge-free frame that is still foldable. Of course, we have seen this with the Birdie because the Birdie is also foldable in a way that there are no hinges. The Birdie has a short wheelbase to do this and a very unusual front folding design. What the Ahooga does is yet another completely different thinking on this. In fact, the front doesn't even really fold. There is a quick release and you are supposed to remove the wheel. Hopefully you are wet wiping the wheel at the end of each day as I do, so it's relatively clean and it's not so bad to fold it. But other than that, the front is really not folding. It's more like you are disassembling it, but there is a way of attaching it to the frame after folding. So you can carry and you can even roll the bike around. There are carry wheels. Now the way the fold works is that only the rear wheel folds. It folds into the frame the same way as it does on the Brompton and the Birdie, except that those guys had to modify the tubes in order to accommodate the rear wheel folding in. What this bike is doing, it's basically giving you a diamond frame. Just like if you had a regular bike with the 28-inch wheels, you have a diamond frame, but the down tube, the bottom tube, is not one fat tube, but instead you have two small diameter tubes that allow a wheel with a tire to slip in between. This is a unique solution I have not seen anybody else do. It could work. The company is very quiet about how much of a tire width you can fit in. I would say for me, for this type of solution to be perfect, I would expect a 2.5-inch tire to fit. In other words, a full gravel tire with some mud and dirt on it should still be foldable on this frame. And I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm not seeing it. I don't know if you can fit a 2-inch wide tire, such as something like the Schwalbe Big Apple in it. One of their illustration appears to feature such a tire, so maybe it's possible. But just by eyeballing it in and looking at it, it looks the space there looks a little bit too narrow. Now, even if you can only fit a maximum of 1.5. This is still way better than what the classic Brompton offers, because the maximum you'll fit there is one 1.5 tire, which fits only if you remove the rear mud guard. And in general, the tire selection for the 6.25 weird, unusual wheel size of the classic Brompton, they're just not enough of a selection. Whereas with Ahooga, you have 20-inch wheels, and that wheel size in the small wheel section has the greatest selection anywhere on the market. So you can choose plenty of tires that are way softer, way more comfortable and more controlled than a very hard 1.35 typically run on the Brompton. In addition to all this Ahooga bike has foldable roll-up mud guards front and rear. They are not very functional, and it's really weird. It looks weird. I actually don't like it very much, but there is that option. And you could say that the Brompton does not offer it, although the Brompton does come with mud guards. It's just they are permanent, they are heavier, they are hard, made out of plastic typically, so they are susceptible to impact and being cracked and broken. Whereas these foldable mud guards are just amazingly compact. In addition to that, the prices are really not bad. The basic configuration is 1,500 euros, and the euro and the dollar are roughly the same value at this point. So that's about 1,500 for the basic model. They have electric versions. There are two of them. There's a 24 volt, which is 2,400 euros, and there is a 36 volt version, which is more expensive. The 36 volt Ahooga bike is $2,800. Now, any of these that I looked at is still way cheaper than what Brompton is charging, as much as $1,000 cheaper, and that's significant. And if you look at the tiny batteries and the range you get from them, the bigger bike, the 36 volt bike, the Brompton is also 36 volt if you're interested, it gives you 40 miles on paper on a single charge. The other one, the 24, is only going to give you about 25 to 30 miles on a charge. So for much lower prices, you are getting pretty much as much performance out of an Ahooga that you would get out of a Brompton. Obviously, this is not a classic timeless design. I think it's reasonably well built, but looks like mostly machine made, and it's not going to last a lifetime, but it's going to last for possibly a decade and a half, and it is very decent value. It gives you certain options. The fact that you can fold it and roll it and have a frame that is so much more rigid than the Brompton, I think is significant. As far as the 24 volt version, I ride the 48 volt, and the maximum power you get is 250 watts, so that's the equivalent of 125 watt on 48 volt, and I know how much that is. That's really only good to cruise on flat ground. It's not going to do much to get you up a steep slope, even a not so steep slope. It's going to help you a tiny bit to accelerate off the red light or a stop sign. It's not going to make much of a difference. So I'm not even sure why they built this. Maybe some people don't have the money, but they want some imagination of a support, because this is really not a lot of support. And also the top speed is limited to 15 an hour, which is basically a configuration tailored for the European market. So this bike is not the best choice for the US market. Unfortunately, that's what Brompton is also doing. Because of their limitation of 15 miles an hour, it is less suitable for the US market, and there are plenty of other options of e-bikes, even if you don't build it yourself, that would give you more speed, which makes a difference. If you are even on the bike lane or on the side of the road and you're getting bullied by a car, every mile per hour speed, every bit of power you can muster to get out of that situation is going to be a factor in survival and in staying safe. So this is not a recommended classic bike, but I think it's an honorable mention because it's a decent choice. And especially if you are in Europe already, then this might be something you may want to consider, as opposed to investing into a classic Brompton frames or buying a Brompton electric. The second bicycle I want to look at is the Vello. A lot of people have written to me about the Vello bike. This is an Austrian bike. I have never seen it in the US. I am not sure if it has much of any support in the US, just like the other bike, but you can definitely buy it. You can import it into the country. And one of their bikes like the cargo bike. In fact, all of the cargos I have seen are definitely highly recommended. They are the most recommended cargo bike on this channel, and that's because of a variety of reasons. I have done separate videos on cargo bikes. Feel free to search them on the channel and check them out. I think they are beautiful and very capable. Now, Vello has different advantages from the previous one, from the Ahooga bike I just reviewed. The first thing that you see when you look at the page is that they have so many configurations of this bike. Literally everything I can imagine. They have a roll-off hub option. They have a titanium frame with the roll-off hub, something nobody else offers. There are all kinds of different hub and non-hub gear options. Furthermore, they do have derailleur systems, but if you have a hub gear or if it's a single gear bike, you don't need a derailleur or any kind of tensioner because of the way the fold works. As you fold the rear wheel, the distance between the rear hub and the chain wheel does not change, so there's no need for any kind of tensioning. This is unique, and it makes the Vello a unique fold compared to all of the others. Is this a beautiful bike? I think they have won some awards for it, but I think it's mostly for the engineering, not for the design. This is not a gorgeous, timeless design, to say the least, and the fold is really awkward. This is not a bike you can roll around. As far as the Ahooga is concerned, you can roll that one around. You can't roll the Vello. It is pretty awkward. The front actually folds also. It folds in a weird, awkward way. You have to unscrew it like a Brompton, but it folds in a way that's totally different. I should also comment on the cabling. Both the Ahooga and the Vello are externally cabled, and the way the cabling is done is okay, but it's not all that elegant. I do see a lot of wires just getting scrambled and hanging around. So the main advantage to this frame is it is also a non-braking, no hinge frame. You fold only the rear wheel suspension and where the front wheel attaches. But two bikes, the Ahooga and the Vello, still have a different approach. Nevertheless, it's a non-braking frame, and there are so many versions of it that's really the high point here. If you want a bike from them, that I do recommend, check out the cargo bike. It's really beautiful, and there are so many configurations. I also welcome the existence of belt drive options, something I have not seen on the Ahooga. The Ahooga seems to be stuck with the standard derailleur. Not even a hub gear configuration is available. So if you want a lot of selection, then I guess the Vello would be a choice for you, because they do offer configurations that I have never even seen from anybody else. Finally, I want to look at the Tern. Tern is different from the other two. Unlike the other two, who are mainly European-centered bikes, Tern is seriously international. They've been around for decades. They have very well organized supply lines and stores that support them. I have seen so many people on the Tern, both in the US and in Europe. This is all over the place. They also have a humongous selection of options within the 20-inch wheel category, and they don't make anything smaller than that. They are currently offering 29 bicycles. Some of them are not foldable. So if you just want something compact that you can keep in a small space inside an apartment, next to the car, in the garage, or whatever your situation is, but you don't need it to be foldable, they do have options for you. And some of them they have a cargo bike, which is recommended on this channel. Not because it's handmade or it's the most shocking value, but because it's a very honest job. And frankly, there isn't much of a competition on the market. Really high quality cargo bikes are rare, and I think the reason for this is partly because the US market is very slow catching on that instead of using a car for everything, you could get a lot of value out of a cargo bike. So it is a small market in the US. In Europe, it's catching on a lot better, but mostly in Northern and Central Europe. The Southern Europeans seem to like their scooters, and they are sticking with that. So this is what I have to say about the Tern cargo bike. The non-cargo bikes, They have so many options. You can get a variety of high-speed options that go really fast, and they have some remarkable, unique engineering to increase the speed. And they have stuff that some of them can be folded and wheeled around better than a Brompton. It's a bulkier fold, but you can wheel them around with both wheels, full-size 20-inch wheels, actually touching the ground, and you're not using a carry wheel. You are using the actual wheel of the bike to roll it around. The cabling is typically external, not always, but typically, but it's very nicely done. This is the nicest cabling I have seen so far. You can go up with the tire size pretty much as far as you would want to go on a 20-inch wheels. You cannot fit a fat tire. I mean, that would take a special rim on any bike. But you could go up to a gravel size on many of these models, even if you're not buying it like that. And many of their models are sold with 2-inch wide tires. So they are a very comfortable urban setup if you need something to commute, to run errands, even to shop, and even to carry passengers in some cases, because you can use a cargo bike to pick up a kid from the school. Some of them are strong enough to carry an adult, and that's the case over here. There is a hinge in the middle of the frame, which is not as sturdy, is not as rigid or as safe a solution as what we have seen with the Vello, the Ahooga. But on the other hand, it's very handy. It's a latch, so it folds a lot quicker than the Brompton, but is less secure because it is a spring-based mechanism, different from the slow, old-school way of screwing things in on the Brompton, which is actually very secure, and I do support it. A lot of people would like to see something more modern. I hope Brompton is not going to cave in for those people, because I think they are wrong. Tern has electric options, belt drive options, everything between the derailleur and some hub gears as well. Not as many options as I see with the Vello. Certainly no titanium cargo bike or titanium roll-off. There is no roll-off option at all. But on the electric bikes, typically, at least in many cases, you are going to get a Bosch center drive, which is really fancy. It is probably the most reliable electric configuration that you can get. It can be pricey, and center drives do have this disadvantage. They don't have brake regeneration. But the electric versions on the other bikes I have reviewed and the Brompton also do not have brake regeneration. If you want to have high-end features like no speed limit, brake regeneration, heat monitoring, and a variety of other things, you just have to get my book, and everything is written down there. I also have done a number of videos on some areas of this subject. What Tern does give you is this Bosch center drive and speed limit of 20 miles per hour. Is a 5 mile per hour speed limit such a big deal? Yes, it is, because it is 33% more than what you would get from the Vello. And I think that makes a difference. Obviously, my preference would be no speed limitation. I would like to see a federal law banning any speed limitations, because they are dangerous. As a car behind you sees you accelerating briskly because you have a strong electric center drive, and then you stop at 20, you freeze at 20 miles an hour. That's a ticket for them to crash into your back. So if you want to get rear-ended, this is a good system to get. But all prefab bikes in the US have speed limitations. Not so with scooters. Electric scooters go up to insane speeds, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, and they sell them shamelessly. They are not afraid of a government action or lawsuit. Somehow maybe bikes are treated differently. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if the law is any different for scooters or not. So I would say, out of these three types of bikes that you can get, being a resident of North America, my preference would be to look into some of the Tern models, because I get support. I have local stores that cover it. I can get parts for it. It's not so unusual, so I probably won't get into much of any trouble trying to maintain it. And the quality is definitely not inferior to any of the others. For an electric, I would definitely prefer a Bosch center drive to any of the little hub motor driven Vello and Ahooga options that I have seen here. So the Tern is my choice, but you can't really go wrong getting any of the others either, because the prices are either the same as what Brompton is offering for the same configuration, or they are actually cheaper. In some cases, they could be a lot cheaper. This is it. As you know, what I recommend, in addition to the Brompton steel frame, remains anything with the birdie badge on it, anything that says Alex Moulton, and I recommend the car goes both from Tern as well as from the Vello.
I'll be back.